creates a fireball, just like an atomic explosion, and actually you have an object of order a meter colliding with Earth every year. Every year there is an atomic explosion size fireball in our atmosphere. It's not reported in the news because it happens pretty high at an altitude of 50 kilometers, so it doesn't do anything. And 71% of the Earth is covered by oceans. But these meteors, and they are quite important. Obviously, we know that the dinosaurs 66 million years ago were extinguished by a giant impact by an asteroid the size of Manhattan Island. And we are aware, by the way, that such an impact could endanger us. And that's why the US Congress tasked NASA to find all objects that come close to Earth with a size bigger than a football field, about 140 meters, so that we avoid the fate of the dinosaurs. So we think we are smart, we can see these rocks coming, but just imagine alien technology. It will not follow a path that you expect if it has some intelligence in it. And that's a risk that was never attended to. And I wrote a white paper to the United Nations and to the International Astronomical Union to develop a strategy for monitoring interstellar objects that come from outside the solar system, like 3I Atlas, that show anomalies that could potentially be technological in origin.
The structures on Mars, like what do you think when you look at them? When you see that one that looks like a square?
I think it's very intriguing. Both Mars and the Moon have no atmosphere, so the objects that come into them do not burn up, as I mentioned before about Earth, and therefore they serve as museums. Okay, so any space junk that might have landed on Mars over the past 2 billion years would not have burned in the atmosphere. It would have landed, and we need to check the surface, even if we know that there wasn't any civilization out there over the past 2 billion years because conditions are really harsh.
Right.
Mars may have collected technological debris from other civilizations because it would stay on the surface. It's just like a museum.
But this is an enormous structure. It's at least, I think they think 300 meters, but
yeah, but that's not enormous because
quite a bit longer.
3I Atlas, the size of 3I Atlas is at least 5 kilometers in diameter. And I derived it in a paper a couple of weeks ago because we know that it's losing mass. So, it's mostly from the side that is facing the sun. And you would have gotten some recoil as a result of that in the opposite direction, just like a rocket. And I used, together with two colleagues, 4,000 data points from 227 observatories around the Earth of 3I Atlas that monitored its motion across the sky. And we were able to say that the trajectory is sculpted only by gravity. There is no evidence for this recoil. And that means that the object is very massive. And I derived a value of 33 billion tons, a huge thing, which if you take solid density, it means it's more than 5 kilometers in diameter. So when you mention a few 100 meters, that's nothing.
Right.
And this object, by the way, was discovered just over the past decade of observing the sky. So who knows how much debris collected on the surface of Mars or the Moon, because there are good museums, and by the way, I see that as their most important value. Let me just say one thing about my fundamental point of view.
Okay.
Each of us would live for about 100 years if we are lucky, right? That's the kind of... It's pretty depressing, right? Because there is so much we would like to know, and we have only 100 years, so... And, that already tells you that you need to be modest and humble because you don't have a lot of time, right? So why engage in conflicts? Why reduce the lifespan of other people, in wars? It makes no sense, all of this.
Right.
You have limited time. Let's just use it for something constructive. Anyway, we are born on this rock, which is just 3 millionths of the mass of the sun. It's left over material from the formation process of the sun. Some debris was left over in a disk, and the Earth was made out of that. That's it. And it's just a speck of material, nothing significant. And this Earth was moving around the sun 4.54 billion times before the Vatican even existed. And why do I say the Vatican? Because the Vatican put Galileo in house arrest when he said, I don't think everything moves around the Earth. I see some moons through my telescope. I see some moons around Jupiter, and they don't seem to revolve around the Earth. They revolve around Jupiter. Therefore, the Earth is not at the center. So they put him in house arrest. Today, they would have, canceled him on social media. and my point is, that's the first sign that, humans they want to think that it's all about them,
Right.
And it's not surprising. But the Vatican admitted their mistake. In 1992, they issued an official letter saying Galileo was right. That was 350 years after he died. And, it's the worst public relations affair that you can have, to admit that you were wrong for 350 years. And how could they have avoided that? Very simply, if they said, we have more money than Galileo, we will build an even bigger telescope to figure out the truth, and we would prove him wrong. And then they would have found that he was right. And so then they would have corrected course shortly after.
Or they would have put more people under house arrest. That's probably what they would have done.
Yeah, so my point is, it's really important in cases like this or 3i Atlas, it's really important to get as much data as possible. Because once you reach a certain threshold, you can't shove anomalies under the carpet of traditional thinking, the way that my colleagues do. Just to give you an example, the first interstellar object was Oumuamua, okay? And it was discovered 2017, and it was really strange because it was shaped like a pancake based on all the data we have, and it was pushed away from the sun by some mysterious force without showing any evaporation, no gas or dust around it. What did these conservative comet experts say? Most recently, just in December 2024, there was a paper of them saying, it's a comet. It's a dark comet. In other words, a comet where you can't see the cometary tail around it. So it's just like experts, specializing in zebras. And they go to the zoo and they see an elephant. So then they say, oh, the elephant is a zebra without stripes. And I say, no, it's a completely different animal. A spacecraft would appear differently than a rock, than a comet, because it will not have a cometary tail. It could be propelled by something else. So let me go back to the big picture that I mentioned before. So we live on this Earth, moving around the sun, and my colleagues in academia, one thing I often say is common sense is not common in academia. Because my colleagues in academia know very well about the story of Galileo. They know very well about the possibility of black swans. And they say, it's an extraordinary claim to imagine something like us, as smart as we are, near another star. And I say, no, it's an ordinary claim. Why would you think it's extraordinary? And by the way, if you decide not to collect evidence, not to look for it, then you will not find it. So I say, extraordinary evidence requires extraordinary funding. You really need to put resources to find the evidence. By not attending to this possibility, you will by not imagining this. And by the way, I much prefer to listen to imaginative science fiction writers, first class, because they're much more interesting than second class scientists who don't have an imagination. And they not only have a problem with discussing alien intelligence, they also have a problem with whoever discusses it, and they would try to suppress that voice. And I think it makes no sense whatsoever, because the public really cares about it. My essays on medium.com, they get a few million readers a month now.